Hello, everyone. Welcome. So I'm Rachel, and we have with us today Stan Tatkin and DeStefano, who I'll be introducing shortly. And we'll be listening to a conversation between the two of them around relationships and how we can improve them. So I think this is a really important topic, and really excited to kind of discover and learn today. All right. I think we'll get started. So I'm Rachel, as I said, and I'll just introduce our speakers for today. So we have with us Dr. Stan Tatkin, who is a teacher, a clinician, a researcher, and a developer of the Psychobiological Approach to Couples Therapy, also known as PACT. And Stan is an expert on human behavior and couple relationships. He speaks and teaches around the world on secure functioning relationships, how to understand them, create them, and support them. And Stan has written dozens of academic articles and 6 best-selling books. And along with his wife, Tracey, Stan created the PACT Institute in 2010 to train mental health professionals to successfully integrate a psychobiological approach in their clinical practices. And more than 1.7 million people have tuned into Stan's TED Talk entitled Relationships Are Hard, But Why? So hello, Stan. Thank you so much for being here. Lovely
Thank
to
you,
meet
Rachel.
you.
Thanks.
And we also have with us DeStefano, who is a family psychologist who's been practicing for over 50 years and has taught at the University of California, San Francisco, various doctoral programs and internationally. And he has been a highly effective couples therapist, with half of his practice being therapists. And having led Himalayan treks, he incorporates his studies with Thich Nhat Hanh, the Dalai Lama, and Ramesh Balsekar, I hope I'm saying that right, in his therapeutic practice. And currently he's writing a book, Me, Myself, and I, to share useful and unique constructs that he has long used in therapy. So thank you so much again. Hi, Ron. Thank you for being here.
Hi there, Rachel, and thank you so much for inviting Stan and I to do this. Thank you all for tuning in, you out there, and thanks, Joel, for doing the tech. And I also want to thank Rick Hansen for creating the GCC. And I know he's a colleague and a buddy of Stan and mine, and so that's really great. So that he's done this and that we're here. So Stan, I'm so excited to talk with you. I think in terms of relationships, the and the beautiful, big-hearted, big grasping thing about relationships to save the world that Rachel came up with is a bit daunting, right? Because there's 82 billion people. And um, and I think we really do have it down as a science in terms of what works and doesn't work in relationships. Now, getting 8.2 billion people to agree with that and actually apply it is a little bit difficult and challenging. We meet on common ground. We meet so much. Why I'm excited to talk with you is that your writings speak to me personally and professionally, and they are so useful. Your books are like, if people use your books and do the exercises, things will get better, and they have a facilitator, a therapist like yourself, then it puts it into like warp speed, I think. So we meet in commonality. People find when they don't know each other, they find things that they have in common. And that's where we join. That's where we join. And your work, which I'd like to ask you the first question is like, how do we, I think, apply your work, not so much to the whole world, where it would be nice to spread it out, but in our own small world, in our homes and our relationships. And your notion of the primitives and the ambassadors is so, I think, so fundamental and key, very similar to the concepts that I use with different names. So I'd like you to kind of feel free to kind of give the basis of where you are now with your work, of what you think is so important for us all to know out there um, about how we deal with those primitives and how we cultivate our ambassadors.
So I thank you. I want to first say something that I hope people don't misunderstand. As far as we know, we're the smartest creatures, depending on how you measure smartest creatures on this planet, right? We can do things that other mammals can't do, other animals can't do. We can predict the future based on the past. We can plan for that and change, right? Our strategies, change what we're going to do based on that ability. We also are able to make things up out of whole cloth and manifest them, right? Relationship is one of those things that doesn't really exist in the physical world. It is in our heads, right? You can't really take a picture, be sure it's a relationship, but you can take a picture of people. And so relationship is a shared mythology. If people get along, it usually involves a shared mythology that where people are in agreement about big, important things, right? But sadly, also, what's true about human primates is that over the millennia, we have been warlike and aggressive and selfish and self-centered, moody, fickle, opportunistic, exploitive, really easily influenced by groups. We can change our affiliation on a dime if we're pulled in by a group. Racist, in other words, xenophobic. We otherize too easily find where we are different and where we disagree. When a higher level of social emotional function or thinking or even personal morality is to find where we are the same and where we do agree, but that takes development, that takes skill, that takes an understanding. And so this is what we're saddled with, all of us, no exceptions, right? We're all capable of doing amazing things and terrible things. Nature doesn't care, right? And so the only way that we can be living in harmony, since we otherize, right? Somebody like Harari says, somebody who's too familiar to ignore, different to live with. That could be our children, that could be our neighbor, it could be our spouse, it could be anybody, right? Because that's tribalization. We see it, right? It's always happened. Is to have social contracts that are based on fairness, justice, mutual sensitivity, with an eye towards collaboration and cooperation. That is the way it works best in a free society or free union of equals, right? The larger the system, the more corrupt that idea becomes, not because people are corrupt, but because just the way our nature is. So it gets harder as systems get larger because of all the features that I talked about. These are not pathologies. These are not aberration. These are not good or bad, right or wrong. It just is that our tendency to be self-centered and exploitive and opportunistic just is. The only thing that stops us from doing whatever we want or being pro-self and not pro-relationship at the same time are agreements. Agreements along the lines of social contracts, good for me, good for you. And a couple, you could say, is the smallest unit of a society, right? There are two people creating a culture, hopefully. They're the designers of this thing called their relationship. Although most people do not think that way. And so they don't think in terms of that they're the designers, they're the architects, they're the builders. It's bespoke to their wishes only, right? We do exactly what we believe is right or good or best, right? Not what anybody else does. If people would do that, they would get along better. But that's not the case. People go into those relationships with their own ideas, their own fantasies, entitlements from their family of origin, injustices that they want to get justice. And unfortunately, sometimes the world has to pay for the sins of the parents. And so all sorts of factors are going into expectations, going into love relationships but nobody is actually talking declaratively. What should we do and what should we never do? So say us both. Governance, right? Big ticket items like principles that are purpose based, not feeling based. And so a lot of this has been my thinking as you know, as a therapist and as a teacher and as somebody who's been immersed in neuroscience and psychobiology. You know, what is actually the problem here? Is it personality? Is it attachment? Or is it the human condition? And that is pathology just an amplification of what is already there for all of us, right? Because we're talking how we behave that is either pro-social or not, you know, pro-self or pro-social. I say that our tendency always is to be pro-self without being pro-relationship at the same time. That's a harder thing.
Yeah.
Systems that enforce it, like the military, special forces, cop car partners, Olympic candidates, right? Teams. Anybody who is coming together with a shared purpose and shared vision. We want to win. We want to live, survive. We want to make money. We want to succeed. Tends to get along better because they do have a culture that has been built up to ensure that people don't harm each other and that they reach their goal, right? And so if I am hard to get along with and I don't play well, then I'll get kicked off the team, right? Unless I'm a star player, right? I mean, there are those cases, but rarely. You know, this is a collective effort, and one person can ruin it for the team and their purpose, and will actually either be reprimanded or will be kicked out. Same thing with a band. Same thing with an act, right? But mostly with couples, no, there is no deal or no deal. There is no terms and there are no terms and conditions that are explicit. There is an assumption that we're family and that we don't need to do that because, after all, love will will out, or you would never do that. I don't have to worry about that, or I would never do that, so don't worry about that. And that's naive. And so they don't really organize. And even if they're really good at this, they're naturals. They won't be for long because life is load bearing and increasing load bearing as we lose and gain things and add more people. The complexity increases. Naturals, if they're not skilled, if they don't understand how this works, in other words, people, will come apart if the load bearing is such, right? So in relationship, we want longevity, of course, but we also must have happiness and durability, endurance, right? So that we're able to handle any weather without the wheels coming off, right? We can handle that. We're good as a team. It's a team sport.
Yes.
And people don't understand that the nature of these relationships are and should be interdependent, meaning you and I have the same things to gain and the same things to lose. And if we don't have that, there will be trouble. There will be trouble, right? So it's you know, we're together in this, tied together. Our fates are tied. It's like a three-legged race. If I were to bind people's, it's always hard to do on Zoom. If I were to bind people's inner legs for a month, they'd know exactly what would be required. You couldn't move or survive or do anything without each other's permission. And that's actually the truth. But there is no physical reminder in couples. There is no culture that expects it, right? We're not in the military, right? So that's the problem with most relationships, a lack of conscious declarative organization, you know, according to what we want and what we never want. And then the other part having to do with the human condition is the manner in which we will all interact when one or both of us are under stress. That is always a problem because of our threat system and our survival instinct. When that engages, we're nasty because we only care about our survival. We don't care about the relationship. And that's the human condition.
Well, yeah,
Did I,
that's
I hope
that's
I didn't bum anybody out, because all of this
no,
is
but I mean,
important knowledge.
so look, I mean, so Stan, that is the human condition,
Yeah.
and so all of us, since we're wired for survival, and when the amygdala starts feeling threat or perceiving threat, even if it's not a real threat,
Yes.
it only has three choices. There's not, it's the animal in us. There's nothing human or high spirited in it. It's fight, flight, or freeze. So at those times,
Or
um,
collapse.
or yeah, collapse. It's kind of collapsing is like freezing and falling on the ground. Anyway, there's
Well, these are words, right? Words can mean anything you want them to mean, but generally, when we talk about freeze, we're talking about a high sympathetic locking of the periaqueductal gray, the PAG, and
yeah,
that causes a
yeah,
locking for the moment, but it's up there. Stilling or collapsing or rolling
yeah.
over or dropping
Hmm.
down parasympathetically is different. It's more, it's areas of the brain going offline,
Yeah.
speak. And
Well,
to hyperarouse, same thing, going offline as well. But it's a different condition. My heart rate is slowing down. My blood pressure
okay.
dropping. Right. So that's stilling. That's what I'm saying. That Steve Porter
Wow.
calls life threat.
Yes.
When I cannot
Okay.
fight and I cannot flee, I will collapse or play dead. Uh, that's
Well said. And so we got the primitives and in us that are going to do anything for individual survival.
yes,
And the good news is, my understanding is very close to the amygdala, that is the threat center of us that makes us be so reactive, is also the insula, which is the maybe tries to put on the brakes and to have empathy for others that, you know, I don't want you to hurt me, but I don't want to hurt you either. And how do we join together what you call the ambassadors to be diplomatic, to be able to say, you know, we're either going to look, what are our principles here? We're going to survive together or we're going to
right.
die together. So if survival is important to me, that also ultimately is not a solo sport. I mean, how do we make
Mm,
it so that it really is interdependent? That is such an important notion. And I often suggest that couples create their own declaration of interdependence with each other, um, rather than this notion of independent versus dependent. We're very good as a nation of rugged individualists, but
right.
the sense of how to really partner and team, like you say, doesn't have a lot of, unless you're in an organized thing, a military thing, or police, it doesn't have a lot of societal support for how to be a really good couple, as you call it, the
Or
couple
citizen.
bubble,
Or,
the couple bubble that is like us, that against the world, that can be very threatening and insecure, but that we're going to do everything to preserve security, a sense of security within ourselves. And one of our principles, and to get out of that, um, the what I call the me's, the baby me's of like, and what you call the primitives, that is like this. That when people are getting fired up and they're both in their primitives, or what I call their me's, it's like
right.
there's no real contact. And I love the simplicity of some of
That
your
was a good demo because
solutions.
that was a good demo because you had microphones also in your earbuds, so that made it. That was a good.
Thanks. Well, and the other important thing is, and it's so simple but so important,
Yeah.
when you're speaking to someone, eye to eye, so that you are seeing them. When people are really stirred up and upset and angry and in their primitives or their me's, and they're like this, they're looking away. They're in the bad movie that's often replication of there you go again. You're saying and doing the same things that bother me and hurt me. And that's just like previous relationships in my family of origin. So there's this whole repository that we have in
Right.
here that gets so easily triggered. And to block that, to help that, is looking in the eyes. And I do think you make this point in your book that in terms of aging, and both of us are aging, I'm your big brother here,
I'm
that
not.
we that the eyes don't age. And
Um,
unless there's some kind of
until you get a lot of cataracts, maybe it starts to look a little fuzzy, or yeah, but generally, yes.
I had cataract surgery last year, and now it's 2020. It's amazing. If only they could figure out ways to do that with all the other parts of the body. But
Right.
the eyes have it. So it really is
That'll
the
happen
eyes
after
have
we die, by the way.
yeah. And then there's I think the voice. The voice doesn't change much. I mean, I get a call from somebody I haven't seen in 50 years, and I know who it is. So
Gets a little lower. Gets a
yeah,
little lower. Yeah, especially
yeah,
with especially women.
yeah. But that notion of if you're going to talk to each other, look in each other's eyes. Don't try to debate or argue when you're in a car driving somewhere. Don't do things that you're not making contact with each other. If I love you and I'm seeing you, it makes it hard for me to say to do anything to hurt you. It's when we're really getting wigged out that
Right.
that really amplifies.
So forgive me, I'm science oriented, so all of that has an explanation and a practical, tactical point to it, right?
Mm,
There are reasons that we would look into the eyes. One is we fall in love through the eyes, unless there's a
mhm,
problem in our history or we have a hard time with eye contact. But generally speaking, we're
mhm,
wired for faces at the very beginning, and
mhm.
we have a visual brain. It used to be a smell brain, but we've evolved from that.
Yeah,
And we
yeah.
have visual centers, and we error correct through the eyes. We error correct words, sound, sounds, the tone of voice, everything. We cross check it visually. And so if I am not looking at you under stress, my error rate is going to be higher than it would be if I were looking at you in your eyes and paying attention, right?
Mhm,
We have a
mhm.
tremendous error rate when it comes to perception, memory, and communication, right? We are mostly
Yeah,
misunderstanding each other most of the time without realizing it. So
yeah.
communication actually sucks base, right? Remember when we were hunters and gatherers, there wasn't a lot of words, right? It was duck, run, sleep, eat, right? And now we have I don't know how many words at any given time that are colloquial, and then lose
Mhm,
words, right? So it's very
mhm,
complicated, and our memory never has been good. The recording of
mhm,
is faulty, and so
mhm.
really trust that much. And our perception is driven by state of mind, which is like a funhouse mirror. So
Yeah,
none of that,
yeah.
none of that we can ever be sure of. And yet, the hubris of our species is to believe that our communication, our perception, our memory is correct. You're wrong. And that is a fallacy that can be disproven. And it's also pro self only, not pro relationship. So the reason we look in the eyes is because that's where that the brain loves the face, first of all, in close up. The further away we get, the less detail we can pick up and the more errors we make. So talking,
Mm,
arguing, or working things out across the room is not going to be great. Doing it side by side is worse, which is why you don't get into emotional conversations while driving, because we're legally
mhm,
blind on this side, and the amygdala,
mhm,
which you mentioned, fires more frequently, is more threatened. So that's one. Two, one person is using resources if they're driving and they don't have much to headroom to take on an emotional conversation. So people will fight. So you want to be dead on because we see the world in 3D only through a very small pinhole called the fovea. That's why it's a tactical, practical reason if you are trying to
mhm,
co regulate each other's nervous systems through through distress or stress, because under stress, we are in danger of a brain change that is immediate. And that brain change isn't really due to the amygdala. The amygdala is a part of that. But the executives in the prefrontal cortex are the mediators and the ones that can talk to the amygdala and say, simmer down. It's okay. Nothing's bad happening. You're making it up, whatever it is. But when we get just even a little bit of glucocorticoids, these neurotransmitters also in blood, but here only in the brain, there is a brain change that mutes the prefrontal cortex and keeps it from extinguishing false perception, sensory perception in the amygdala and other areas, and so we lose any ability to empathize, to care about the other person's interests. We are changed now, and you cannot influence me. And once I move into unsafety, and that process is there, you don't have an audience with me. You can't influence me because now I am going to move all my interests and hold them and protect myself from you. That's a very, very subtle change that is significant. So if you know what's good for you, if you're trying to get something or trying to have me hear something or have me agree with you or to influence me or convince me of something, you have to immediately return me to safety or you get nothing. That's a fact. And that's what we're dealing with, not a personal matter. It feels personal, but this is biology. Our survival instinct is incredibly acute to where parts of our brain will see our child as an adversary, right? As a threat. That's how indiscriminate it is. And the problem is that when we are getting aroused, when our heart rate goes up to a certain level and our blood pressure goes up to a certain level, we are inching toward that brain change. Also, if we drop too far, another brain change, but similarly disabling. As soon as that starts to happen, we become a one-person system of me, I, my, and you. And that automatically is picked up by another human being as adversarial, automatically. So we have this really sensitive system that operates on pattern recognition, not critical thinking, right? You can't use critical thinking if that system, the threat system, is ignited because you have to act now. Therefore, I'm going to read through pattern recognition. It looks like a duck, I shoot it. Not that I should shoot ducks, but you get the idea. It has to be fast and indiscriminate because my life is in danger, not personal. It's just the way we're wired. So people have to know how to trick that system because it is very acute, very sensitive. The way you looked at me, why did you do that? The word choice. What do you mean by that? Right? Why are you not moving? What are you thinking? It's about me, isn't it? All these things are normal. We have to understand this is universal. This is across the planet. There's no human being that is not subject to these things, right? It's not female, it's not male, it's not young, it's not old, it's just us, right? Including that thing about in our DNA that we are all racists. All. There is nobody who can't be, right? Because we otherize. That's part of our nature. And unless we can find where we are the same and agree, which takes effort, we will see each other as adversaries. That is just, again, a fact. It's not personal. So we have to get smart, and we have to also be able to build our ability to tolerate pain without punching back, without getting rid of it, Getting rid of pain, you can, it's at the relationship cost. We have to be able to recognize our losses and be able to grieve. Otherwise, we're always angry because of the injustices of others, right? That's most anger is through of injustice. The other is feeling hurt, of course, or feeling frightened by somebody, or feeling helpless. That's when we become aggressive. So we have to know how this works, how we operate and don't. And we have to override this by being better, by using an executive function that is basically here. It's called the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex. It's a cognitive part of, it's a cognitive executive that works downward, more downward projections to control us. It is the do the right thing when it's the hardest thing to do area of the brain. Wow. Other executives can be co-opted by limbic areas, and this is the do the right thing that relieves me now, right? I will do something that is penny wise but pound foolish. I'll do something that protects myself, but at the cost of the relationship. So I'm more given to do the right thing that feels good right now, but isn't good. That's also part of our nature. That's part of also addiction too, right? So, they're tied together. So we have to raise the bar to have purpose-centered principles. Why are we not going to do this? Because both of us believe that it is in our selfish best interests that would be harmful to myself. You believe it would be harmful to yourself, and that would definitely destroy or harm our union. Therefore, we are committed to keep each other from doing those things with permission to enforce, right? You can't, I can't. Even if we hate each other, even if we're mad at each other, under no condition having to do with emotion does this not happen. It must be done. And that is how we work around this condition, right? You and I come up with a life-enhancing policy principle. We're going to do loving, loving, admiring, appreciative things for each other throughout every day. It's just going to be part of the air we breathe. Of course, how you want your appreciation is suited to you, right? Not me. I want it differently.
Yeah.
And the question is, do we do that when we're mad at each other? The answer, if it's purpose-centered, has to be yes.
Yes.
In all cases, it will be done. That's a good life.
So it makes you do things that you can't usually do.
No, you can. You just don't want to.
It's kind of the Dalai Lama speaks of it in terms of the wise selfish, and the best way to take care of yourself is taking care of another. I mean, that's what the couple bubble is. And I like your emphasis on what is our common purpose, our values, our principles that we need, that we both agree on, to strive for, that supersedes what I'm feeling or you're feeling, or what drives us all, couples therapists crazy, or anybody crazy, is the amount of time that couples debate, argue about what happened that didn't happen in reality.
Well, that's memory. Memory sucks.
The memory thing.
If the people go back and litigate the past, even last night, you're going to argue about memory for sure, and you will not get out of that.
Yeah,
because you're both probably wrong.
Yeah, and I love how you articulate that and you write about that in your books, because it is so much an important part of the human condition that if couples, could. Along those lines, the other thing that really stands out to me, because I know both of you and I do a lot of work with not only training, but therapy with people, one or the other, or both, even therapists. But therapists or not, there's a sense
fucked up like everybody else.
Yeah, and the sense of diagnosing each other, like it's professional name calling. It pretends to be smart, and I'm an ambassador, but really it's the primitives kind of saying,
it's
"Fuck
otherwise.
you."
That's how we otherize. That's how we otherize. I think you're a codependent. I think you're on the spectrum. I think you can't read faces. Yeah. You're borderline. You're codependent. You're all these things. These are all pejorative in defense of my feeling hurt by you because we don't agree and we're too different. So I feel. And so we co-opt these terms that are meant to understand people and use them as a cudgel to beat each other up or ourselves with. And that's not the purpose of categorization. The purpose of categorization is to organize experience and to organize something that seems too big, too hard to figure out. And so we do that. We must do that. We have to categorize, organize, otherwise we go mad, right? We can't make meaning of things, and then we'll be upset, right? So it's a sort of a biological mandate that we do it. However, it can be used for evil. It can not, small e. It can be used as a way to devalue people, to make otherize them, to label all these things, and that's when it gets to be a problem, right? But that's also part of what we all do. So again, we have to watch out for this and understand that that is not pro-social.
But one of the things that I love about your work is how you really encourage people to bypass trying to solve or fix or diagnose the other person, and to say, what is the issue or problem that you or we have? How do we fix and solve the issues or the problems, the differences in us that create friction? One of the big things about your work that I want to mention here that is so important is not only genetically and family of origin experience that is so fixated in us, but our early attachment styles that we all want and hope, if we're lucky, to have secure attachments with the mother and child in the beginning, feeling really secure, you're there for me. We want that in our love relationships and our friendships to have that secure attachment. The vast majority of us aren't lucky enough to have secure attachments when we grow up. So we then have the insecurity of either being the anxious person that's afraid, I'm afraid you're going to leave me. And then the other people who are yet insecure and avoidant, that is like, oh damn, I'm stuck with you for life. And those two different ways of being wired get triggered. So trying to have people understand this is just kind of set in you. You could both agree that what you want is for both of you to become more secure. That has to happen in different ways, because if not, people start making the other one wrong for being the way they are, rather than how do we have peace and harmony when we have
Yeah.
these different fears and threats. One, you're going to leave me, the other one is stuck. What I often do is suggest that couples agree to make an agreement, because we live in a world where so much hurt happens, and it's the stuff of books and movies where one person leaves and the other one's left. And the ones that leaves, if they're not, a cruel sociopathic person, feels guilty, and the one's left feels like not lovable. So make an agreement that if either of you ever start feeling like, I don't know if we fit together, that you give it the time and the space that you do not no unilateral leader leaving, that you talk with each other or with a therapist or something to get to the same page if possible, of let's break up or let's have a breakthrough.
Okay. Let me flatten the field just for a moment and start at the very top. There is nothing more difficult on the planet than another person. And if you can think of anything that is as difficult as another person, let me know. Here's another fact. All human beings are a pain in the ass. Everyone's irritating, annoying, and disappointing. There is no way around that, because most of this has to do with a perception, has to do with my experience, right? So there is no escaping that. That's not a problem. We just don't want threat, right? Threat is the big problem. And so when you're talking about attachment, you're talking about an organized adaptation from childhood that's passed on almost like a culture. And it is insecure attachment can be summed up as a system that is too pro-self, while not at the same time being pro-relationship, right? Too pro-self, which means it's fundamentally too unfair, too unjust, and too insensitive, too much of the time. So that's relational trauma. And so if I'm in the distancing group, we could call them islands, as I did in one of the books, or avoid, dismissive, derogating, avoidant, right? Distancing, right? My threat here is of being engulfed, being co-opted, being used as a tool, being, right? Because in my family, it wasn't me that was important. It was performance or appearances or appearance. In other words, self-esteem was more important than relationship. And so I got it as an infant because I studied babies. You see it immediately. You see adaptation immediately. And that child stops proximity seeking. That infant stops looking for contact maintenance and doesn't even track their caregiver as they enter a room. This is an adaptation. Now, for people in the distancing group, that sounds like a great child. That's an easy child, right? They're in their room and they're taking care of themselves. I don't need to worry about them, even though they're probably building a bomb. But anyway, because they're neglected on an attachment level. And this is a great part of the population. I would say in the United States, we have more in the distancing group in the Western Europe, in the distancing group than any other, right? Because of our belief in don't tread on me, right? So that is again, a memory from things that really happened. And that memory, again, becomes part of our threat system and our array of threat cues that we look out for. That's the pattern recognition. And so we're liable in protecting ourselves from invasion or losing our autonomy. We protect ourselves in a way that looks and appears threatening to another person, which is liable to reinforce our experience, right? That's how that happens. Continues, right? On the clinging side, we know that group in general was rewarded for being dependent, and simultaneously not scaffolded to explore the non-caregiver world enough, because the parent needed the child to regulate their emotions in some way. Someone needed that, or they felt that they had to step in to do that. And so they have a different experience. Instead of neglect on an attachment level across the board, they alternately had the face-to-face, skin-to-skin, eye-to-eye contact. They got the merging, they got the co-regulation, they got that intimacy, and also were rejected because the caregiver was preoccupied, overwhelmed, and that even though they encouraged clinging, it also annoyed them. And so the child finds the parent there and not available, there and not available. And the not availability for an infant starts to also feel like a punishment. So this is a punishing, angry, rejecting, withdrawing, abandoning caregiver. And now I don't know which I'm going to get. We're not talking about disorganized. We're talking about organized, consistent. And now I have to wait for you to come to me, because I'm no longer going to grab what I want because I'll get slapped and rejected. So I'm a person in waiting, and that makes for a very angry person, right? I can't get what I want. I have to wait for you to show me. And that presents a different defensive behavior posture that, while understood, you can understand that the person is simply remembering as they start to depend on another person, but it appears threatening to the other, right? And so they get rejected because of their anger, negativism, and their need to cling, and their questioning all the time. Distances their partner, and that also reinforces it's always true. It's always true.
Yeah.
This is a memory problem, right?
Yeah.
We could say most trauma, all trauma, being hurt is a memory issue because the memory
getting stirred up again and again.
Yeah. The neural pathways keep getting activated, right? Yeah. The only way to change the past is to change the future with different behaviors. And that's where the healing comes in with a partner who doesn't that way, but understand in both directions. And then this settles down. But I want people to understand that these are complications. The good news is that they're predictable, right? They're predictable.
Yes.
I know I'm going to do this. I know you're going to do this, right?
Yeah.
And so that is power, and that allows me to be a good handler of you, right? You're a good handler of me. And there's the corrective experience if we can do it. Most people can't. They have to go to a therapist paid to deal with their bullshit. Their partner isn't going to. They're human, right? And this isn't family. This is a symmetrical relationship of free individuals coming together based on terms and conditions. It's got to be equal, fair, just. And if it isn't, it won't work. So these are human problems. I just want to make sure that people understand this isn't a pathology. This is an amplification of the human condition because we are in fact herd animals. We're pack animals. We are fundamentally dependent. And if that's denied, there's a problem. We are fundamentally dependent creatures. We group together because we must, because otherwise we're too exposed and in danger, right, in general. So that's why we do it. The problem is that we're so good at war that it's hard to sustain because of that threat system. That's the problem. That's the conundrum. And therefore, we have to build in agreements based on purpose to keep each other from harming each other. Because we will, not purposely, inadvertently, because we're messy and because we do stupid shit. And because I don't know, I talk in a way that for you is threatening. For another person, it's fine. But I may complain that you're difficult because you won't allow me to talk that way. Well, guess what? If I accept differences, then I have to talk that way because your perception matters more than mine. Because if you feel threatened, I'll pay for it. There's no way in that three-legged race that I can do anything to you or with you that won't happen to me right away or very soon. It is, you cannot uncouple this psychobiologically. Again, a fact, you cannot. So that's the team thought, is that I have to move with you in lockstep or we can't move without creating downstream trouble. Therefore, it has to always be win-win. It has to, anything we do has to be good for you and good for me, or one of us will pay, or both will pay for that. And that's not smart. Therefore, we have to confine and discipline ourselves to think differently in a more complex way, that there is no other option. Therefore, we're going to be creative and quicker at this as we go. And maybe we have to learn how to negotiate to make the other person whole enough to do something with us that they don't want to do. It's fair and it's higher level because the moral purpose here is to be together, right? It's not I scratch your back. It's not transactional. It is a higher purpose of remaining a union in solidarity, an alliance, because we can, because everyone is different. And if you think your partner is thinking the same way, just live with them for just a little bit longer because that will be short-lived.
Yes. Yes. Along those lines, I just want to say this is so excellent. And I think it is so core of the human condition for all relationships. And in terms of a sense of security and what keeps people together. And I just want to mention here, I know we both really, love the work of John Gottman. It's probably, it's the best research ever done in marital satisfaction and longevity.
To date, yes.
To date. And so what we want to cultivate is at least a 5-to-1 ratio of 5 moments that both people would say, hey, that was pretty good, was positive, for every one moment of or growl or argument or fight. And that even couples who you see fighting all the time, but they love each other, they stay together, and they say they're pretty satisfied and they have longevity, still have that 5-to-1 ratio. Most of the people that come into our offices have it reversed. It's 1 to 5 because you hurt me, I'm hurt. So now I'm withholding the most important thing that I need to feel happiness with myself as well as with you, which is gratefulness. I am grateful for you. And when I am grateful, I get a gratefulness inside me that feels like happiness. And when I express it through my eyes and affection and words, it creates a positive contagion of gratefulness, and cultivating that gratefulness to try to get the insula really going and get that empathy going and get that win-win going of we are a team. And
there's a science behind what I'm talking
know.
about and what he talked about. And the science is that we are born with a negativity bias.
Yeah.
Negativity bias.
Yes.
In the absence of anything positive, our brain goes negative. Why? For survival, right? And so
Yep.
the mind is not Disneyland, right? It tends to be negative. So if you if you say loving, wonderful things to me, right? But you say something that's hurtful in the middle of it, guess what I'm going to encode as a memory? The only thing is that one thing you said, because it's a survival issue. If I'm hurt, I have to remember to stay away. So that's why we're more inclined to remember negative experiences than positive ones for exactly that reason. And here's another thing. If I don't communicate with you and fill in blanks, and allow you to fill in the blanks, which the mind will autonomically do, I'm risking that you will fill it in with the most negative idea based on your own narrative. That is happening all the time. So for those people who do yep, nope, and are not saying things that would disallow anyone to fill in the blank, are in danger of being cast negatively, like shy people. Then miscast as arrogant. They don't like me. No, they're shy, but they're not signaling enough to counteract the tendency to cast them negatively. In the absence of data, we feel it always, and it's always going to be negative. That's why at night, if you have a lot of self-talk, you're going to start to ruminate. You're going to start to, the signal is dropped and noise is now increased. The flotsam jetsam of the mind, and is not going to be happy, mostly.
This is so great. I could talk to you for hours around this stuff, but it's time to take some questions from the people that have been participating. So let's dive into the questions, Rachel.
And by the way, I'm passionate about this because I myself, I'm a fear-based person. So a lot of this is figuring this out for me too, because the world has always been scary for me. The world basically is people. Okay.
So we had a question from Dawn, who asked, can purpose-centered principles become automatic in relationships? Have we not seen children demonstrate acting without racism? Is it not to a great extent learned?
It's learned, but there's something about the human condition that is aware of someone who is too different. Now, that's an attitude, right? That's a way of thinking, but it's also self-protective. That's why we're fundamentally xenophobic. And that's always, 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 always been there. That's not necessarily a bug, but it will be if we don't understand it and build in principles to keep us from being assholes, right? Because assholes we are. We're also wonderful. Depends on when you catch us, right? So we have to plan for our devils, not our angels, because devils we are, again, if the conditions are right. We know this. There is nobody that is incapable of doing terrible things to another person. It is nobody. So it's naive to just assume that. That is why we have rules, laws. Religion started. 10 Commandments was a way to stop people from killing each other and doing Sodom and Gomorrah. Right? What better way is to scare the hell out of them, right? But this is more personal morality in terms of I want to. Relationships are the most important thing to us. Period. Full stop. There's only a few outliers there that it's not. But for the most part, in the end, relationships are the only things that we celebrate or regret that we messed up. So if you believe that, then you want to do everything you can to protect those relationships, including putting the relationship before the self. That means that I'm not just if I were just putting you before me, that's codependency. If I just put me before you, that's an autocracy, right? Both are one person oriented. The challenge here is I have to consider myself and you at the same time. I have to protect my needs and yours at the same time. I have to stand up for myself, but also you at the same time. Anything else starts a fight. Anything else will be confused by you as I don't care about your interests, and therefore you're going to have to stand up for your interests. And now you're going to talk in a way that threatens me, and now we're off and running. Right now we're going to be in a loop that we can't get out, simply because we're not thinking correctly. We're not oriented towards this is a team. Where you go, I go. Therefore, I have to work with you as a completely different person and accept that, not debate it and not lament it. It is a fact of everything, right? You are not me. And therefore, I have to learn you. I have to be really good at you because we hate things that we're not competent at. So if I can't handle you, I don't like you. I don't like it. Makes me feel terrible. It makes you feel bad because obviously I'm terrible at you. So we have an obligation, just like if our lives dependent on each other, I have to know how you're going to react because I need you. And if you go down, I need to know how to pick you up. Otherwise, I'm screwed. But unfortunately, we're in a fantasy that we're safe here. We're never. I'm sorry, but the world has always been a dangerous, hostile place, unpredictable, except you can predict shit's coming. So that's our naivety and our tendency to deny and to just feel good at the cost of being ready. Being ready could possibly go wrong with my relationship with Ron. Oh, based on what has happened, let's build something in for the future so it does not repeat. Now, how many people are taking mistakes where we didn't get along and moving it into the future like a post-mortem, right? And let's make sure the patient doesn't die again. Let's make sure that doesn't happen again because either of us could do it. That's doable, but people don't do it. They just repeat. They just walk into the same live situation that could have been predicted again and again and again. That's because human beings, like all of nature, is energy conserved. That's a biological thing. We conserve energy because otherwise we'd poop out and we wouldn't get anything done, right? That energy conservation is a feature and a bug, like all nature things, right? It's a feature because it makes everything easier, life easier, relationships easier. It's a bug because I think I know you. I rest on my laurels. I don't even look at you. I think I know your face, even though I've stored the image of your face for weeks and months, right? But I haven't even seen it. I'm no longer curious about you because why? We've automated each other, which means we're going to make more mistakes. We're going to get bored of each other and take each other for granted. We're going to think we're family, but we're not. This is a natural thing for all of us to do, but it's a mistake. It's a mistake in terms of intimacy. It's a mistake in terms of vitality. It's a mistake in terms of we think we know the other person, but we don't. And so we assume, and then we start to hurt each other inadvertently, right? Because we're on an automatic. We're automatic. Most of our day is fully automatic, memory based. We're not thinking. We're not thinking. So if I do something stupid that hurts you, I'm going to do it again, not because I'm evil, but because I'm automatic. Therefore, I need to incorporate you, give you permission to govern me, lest I do this again. Cue me, prompt me, remind me. I will yield, cooperate, apologize, change my tone, change my attitude. That's governance. I'm giving you permission to govern me with the absolute idea that when first I cooperate with you, otherwise we're not safe. That kind of structure has to be built for all of us. All of us. And to not do that is courting danger because of our recklessness, our selfishness, our stupidity in automation and memory base, right? Our ability to just not think because it's energy expending. So we have to organize, we have to structure. Why are we doing this? Why do we exist? Who and what do we serve? What's the point of this union? It cannot be love because love comes and goes and people do bad things in the name of love. It has to be based on a purpose. We're survivors. We have each other's backs at all time, in public and private. We are the most important people in this room and in every room. And so we come first because everyone and everything depends on us being happy and working well together. Otherwise, everyone and everything suffers. That is why we put that at the highest. It's practical, it's hierarchical, and it makes sense, right? These are ways of defining what we are. We share power and authority, or we agree that we don't. Either way, it's an explicit agreement and it's vetted for truth. Because of the attachment system, I'm liable to say yes when I don't want to do that because I'm afraid of losing you. And that screws things up. So it's a rigorous process that's taken seriously, as it would be if you were vetting someone to be your wing person for the rest of your life. You're going to be sure that person is solid because your life depends on that. Their life depends on you being solid and truthful and that you believe in what you are agreeing to. It is a choice. And your character is at stake. I want that to be there because I'm expecting and hoping you'll do this when you least want to. Otherwise, it doesn't count. That takes a certain effort and an awareness. So all the things I'm saying sounds like a bummer that we're all selfish and self-centered and warlike and opportunistic. Yeah, that's true. But the good thing there is that we can protect each other knowing that. And make sure that we don't do that to each other. We can't make the world do that ever. But we can do that in our family culture with our kids, with each other. We can do that. All we have to do is declare it, agree, and therefore it shall be, is our commandments, right? We live by that. Our kids see that. This is our ethos. This is our relational morality as designed by us. Not our family of origin, not by Oprah, not by Stan Tatkin, not by anybody. Us for today. That's a hard thing to do because of development. That's a hard thing to do because of human nature. And yet, there is no union that is free and fair with equals that will last if there isn't a shared purpose and there isn't a shared vision of where we're going and why. What are we getting out of this? And it's too unfair, too unjust, too insensitive. It will never, ever, ever work. It's not personal. It just can't work. So now we're looking at what can we do that works, that has worked over the millennia, and what will never work. Doing nothing won't work. We have to do something to protect each other from each other because we're going to harm each other accidentally. We have to build in ways to repair quickly. Otherwise, threat will build up and we're accruing memory that will start to inflame. And now we're dealing with each other as predators, understandably, because I keep repeating this thing, Rachel. I keep hurting you again and again. I can say I'm sorry till the cows come home. But if I don't build something in with you that keeps me from doing that, we're not going to last. We can't. right? Because I'm creating my own problem by not stopping the repetition. It's a team effort, though. I can't do it alone.
Yeah.
I hand the reins over to you because I'm an idiot. If I do that again, if I act like that, just remind me. I pledge I will yield. I'm a pain in the ass. I am a Jew. I perseverate. I go over. I worry. My wife isn't a Jew. It doesn't matter. But it's annoying, and it's not great for me either because I'm sort of staying in a bad state. So we've agreed it's a guardrail. I have ones with her too. She'll just say to me, "You know what? Knock it off." I know exactly what she's talking about, and I'll go, "Okay." I cooperate because I'm a good faith actor. I'm dedicated to cooperating to the agreements I sign on to. And that's what keeps me in line. I'm doing a hard thing, but it's the right thing. And I'm demonstrating that. That's admirable to the other person. They know I'm going above and beyond, and my self-esteem goes way up. Now, I don't know that unless I start doing this. There's an instant reward because I'm not just the bar isn't on the ground. I'm doing something I know is worth something. There's character here now. And I feel proud of myself, even though it was really hard to do. It's really, we have a thing where we can go to bed angry, but we have to at least touch toes. Now, that sounds easy. And by the way, there's a biology reason behind that because of an existential threat that when we have a breach in the attachment system, we go right into an existential threat that's primitive infant where we don't know if the relationship will exist. So sustained touch is an unequivocal signal that I may hate your guts, but we're okay. That's all we need. We're okay. So, but even that you'd think is easy to do. I've had to really angry at Tracey and she just goes to sleep on me and I'm leaving me with this. The last thing I want to do is hold her hand. I want to punish her. I want to make her suffer. My mind is a buzz. But then I remember our agreement. And I take her hand. And as soon as I do, my anger drops, which is good for me, right? It drops completely. Now I can sleep. And so so is it hard to do? Yes. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Because if it's easy, it's probably not worth anything, truly. And so making choices means I'm giving things up. There is no decision without loss. There is no choice. If I didn't choose my career, I'd be doing like I was, trying to do everything I would and end up doing nothing. If I didn't choose my partner, I wouldn't personally have what I'm looking for, which is I want to know myself. I want to see and experience all the ways I try to get out of intimacy. To dedicate to a perfectly imperfect person because of a certain selfish purpose keeps me invested, even when I'm disappointed with the slings and arrows of my own brain, of moving through time, all the things that make me, want to look elsewhere. Isn't there because I already know that's going to happen. That's not the reason I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I know that's going to happen. But the greater thing for me is to stick to one thing and learn it completely. That's how I know myself. And that's an ongoing process. That's the reason why we commit is to open up a universe of that I can fill in with myself, right? Otherwise, I can't. Otherwise, it doesn't happen, right? So anyway, I talk too much.
That's really fascinating, Stan. What kind of came to mind was that there is this basic goodness. It's not that we are all bad. We do still have this basic goodness within us, but we can't, as you say, rest on our laurels and just kind of expect it to be our predominant kind of way of experience in the world, because actually we live in a dangerous world, and all the kind of survival mechanisms that we have are wired for the survival, not our happiness. And so it does, is worth it to be proactive so that we can be more in that kind of basic goodness that we are, when we kind of take away the layers of fear. But it sounds like work.
we want to be better than the off the factory line human primate, because that human primate is really good when they're happy, but maybe you don't want to be near them when they're not, because they're not disciplined, because they're not organized in a pro-social way, right? So not good, bad, right, or wrong. It just is. We're animals, right? We have to remember that. We don't like that. By the way, that's in the insula. We're disgusted by the idea that we're animals, but truth be told, we are. and as long as we accept that, that's actually easier to imagine that I have to be an expert at the animal I picked, just like if they were an animal. The problem is that we talk, and because we talk, we confuse each other. That's why studying babies and animals is easier. Treating them is much easier because they don't talk. We have to read them as animals. We're confused. We say one thing and mean another. We do all sorts of things. And so when we think of the other person as an animal, then we start to think, I have to know this because I'm responsible for its reactions, right? If it bites me every time I come to their left, who's the idiot? I shouldn't be approaching him every time on the left side, right? So it is competence. It's my partner is in my care. I'm in her care. That's how it should be envisioned, right? That works. We're looking for things that will work and that will continue to work as we move through time. That's what we want, but that has to be thought. That can't be felt. Purpose-centered principles allow for good feelings to be earned and arise, and they contain or prevent bad feelings from happening. That's the purpose of those things. If we govern by emotion, good luck, because that's changing all the time, and that is not pro-social. Okay? And so we create these guardrails, these principles, to allow good feelings to sustain and to be earned, and to prevent unnecessarily fights when we could have come up with a policy. It's like in front of our nose, but we don't think of it. And so our again, the takeaway, there's a lot of takeaway, is that we are built to look for differences and how we disagree. That's low-hanging fruit. That's lazy. Everyone can do it, and people will be inclined to do it. People who are intelligent and know how are consensus makers always know to look where we are the same and where we agree, because everything below that point is negotiable. Anything else will never, ever bring people together, ever. And if you think about how this country was formed, 13 colonies, how do you get 13 colonies, a country of their own, an economy of their own, to not only fight a war they don't care about, but to unionize with others that have other values, right? How do you do that? Somebody or somebody's had to appeal to where their interests were that were similar, and where they were the same, or they would never have joined, ever. That is a reality of how we can sustain groups, sustain relationships, sustain our loving relationships. We fall on our swords. I'd rather protect the relationship than be right, because I can't be certain I'm right anyway. And myself is wrapped up in the relationship. It is wrapped up in the relationship. So doing anything to harm the union is actually suicide, right? Even though it seems like a good idea in the moment. So it's orienting towards that three-legged race, imagining it. We have to move together or we can't move. We won't get anything accomplished. We can't solve problems. We can't create new things. We can't be healthy physically because we're under stress all the time. That's not smart. And so this is an orientation to a two-person psychological system of we and us. There's an I there, there's a you there, but ultimately we're coming together as different people to come up with unique decisions, unique solutions, because we're working on problems, never each other. We work problems, not each other, because that's war. So all of these things we know, but we don't apply to our personal relationships, mostly because we don't think we should. I don't want to do it. I want you to do it. I don't want to do it. Yeah. We have other things to do. Let's put it off. But in other venues and under certain conditions, you would never do that because your life is at stake, or your money is at stake, or your business is at stake, or your interests are at stake, right? Mm-hmm. Here, we're just unprepared to organize. And that's our downfall.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I think there's a lot for people to dig into with what you've shared, Stan. So where can people go to learn more about this?
At the prison I'm currently in. Kidding. Go to our institute website. It's called PACT, P-A-C-T, institute.com, the PACTinstitute.com. There, if you are a mental health professional, that started as really teaching, training, and much, started off as a professor, to train you in this approach, which is, by the way, a polytheoretical approach, meaning it's complicated, but we're integrating the field, right? Instead of rebranding it. And if you're interested in our couple workshops or our retreats, one's coming up in Costa Rica, 5-star retreat in January. Still time to sign in. You'll also find those retreats and online workshops there. Okay. And that's where you find me.
Thank you. Awesome. And Ron, when's your book out?
Yes, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. But it's going to take a while. And I decided, I think the new title is going to be something from me to we, because that's what it's all about. How do we get from me to we? Dan, you're so great with all your books, and definitely people should look at your books. Got a few of them right here I could hold up. Wired for Love. We do. In Each Other's Care, the most recent one. So there. Anyway, we'll see when that comes out. Otherwise, I'll just keep enjoying doing this, and this is great. Thank you so much, Rachel, for inviting me and Stan to have this incredible conversation. This is so important, this stuff that you're talking about. And we got a lot. I know I myself, and I think everyone else out there, it's going to be on video so we can watch it over and over again, because there is so much here, Stan.
I know.
There's a lot here. But it's meaty. We've got to get our teeth into that. So great. So anyway, this is a joy. It's been a joy.
And Ron, same here. I love the riffing with you, all of that stuff. I was a musician as well, and I can see and it's like riffing in music.
I knew we were going to do improv today, and we prepare a lot before, but then we come in and we just improv, and that's the joy. They say, "Oh, this was what a fun duet," So
that is also what lovemaking should be: is an improv, right?
Yeah,
being present,
exactly.
attentive,
Not the same shit over and over again, but improv. I'm really present now. I'm present,
and making love for the moment, not the past, because that ship sailed.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot to learn, a lot to dig into there. So yeah, thank you both so much, and hope to do this again. Thank you so much to everyone for being here. I know we've gone over a little bit, but I hope you learned a lot today, and see you in one of our next events. So take care, everyone, and
bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Play well with each other. Don't be so hard on each other.
Yeah, play nice.